So we've done our simplifying of fractions, we've done our undefined fractions, we did multiplying and dividing, so now we're going to move on to adding and subtracting. So we're going to have 2 days of adding and subtracting. Today's day is going to start with like denominators. Thursday we're going to work on unlike denominators because the process is a little different. And then we're going to move on to some other stuff after that. So when you are adding and subtracting fractions, what you have to do is you have to first make sure their denominators are the same. So let's say, for example, I have the fraction a over c, and I'm trying to add to it the fraction b over c. They have the same denominator. Their denominators are both c. So that means, bless you, I would add my numerators together, keep the denominator as it is. So the denominator would stay at c. It wouldn't become c squared. You're not multiplying. It wouldn't become 2c. The denominator stays as is. So like, for example, let's do it with some numbers. If I have 1/4 and I'm trying to add to it another 1/4, your denominator is going to stay as 1/4. It's just the numerator, 1 plus 1, would give you 2. So we would have 2/4 there. And then, as always, we would reduce our fraction, so it would become 1/2. Same rules apply even if you're doing subtraction. So if I have a over c and I'm subtracting b over c from it, subtract your numerators, keep your denominators. So that's the rule with adding and subtracting. You keep your denominator the way it is. Once there, it's the same. And then you add and subtract your numerators. So keep the denominator the same. Add or subtract the numerators. And then reduce your answer when possible. And remember, to reduce our answers with these ones, a lot of times you got to factor first, and then you cancel out your like terms. So let's take a look at our examples. So we'll start with example 1. So looking at example 1, do they have the same denominator? Yep. So we're good to go with that. You're going to keep the denominator the same. The denominator is going to stay as 7. And we're going to add our numerators. So 3x plus 4x gives us 7x. And then as our last step says, we're going to reduce, if possible, can I reduce that? Yeah. The 7s can cancel each other out. So we're left with x. Now, because my denominators were 7, did I have any restrictions with my fractions? No. Remember, restrictions only happen if there's a variable in the denominator. So let's look at example 2. Are my denominators the same in example 2? Are they exactly identical? Not quite. They're close though. What's the difference between them? They're flipped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this one and make it x minus 2. But when I do that, I have to change this sign. So now it becomes a subtraction. Because I flipped my denominator, it changes my adding to a subtraction. If it was subtraction, it would have changed it to adding. It just changes that sign when you flip that fraction. So now our denominators are the same. So we're going to keep the x minus 2. And now we have the subtraction. So 4 minus 7 gives us negative 3. So now this did have a variable in the denominator all the way back at the beginning. So what would be our restriction on that? 2. X cannot be 2. So there's our final answer for that. So remember, restrictions if it's a variable in the denominator. All right, looking at number 3. So again, you should be asking yourselves in your head, is our denominator the same? Yes, they are. They're both y squared minus 4. So I'm going to keep my denominator. We have a subtraction up here in our numerator. I can't actually subtract my y and my 2, so I just write it as y minus 2. So then for our third step, reducing, can I factor my denominator to reduce it? Yeah, that's a dots factoring. So that's going to be y minus 2 on the top. Y minus 2 times y plus 2 is how we would factor our denominator there. So what would be our two restrictions here? Yep, so y can't be negative 2 and 2. Because when I factored my denominator, set those equal to 0. So we can cancel out our y minus 2's. So our reduced fraction would be 1 over y plus 2. And it doesn't matter which way you write it, restriction first and then your simplified fraction or vice versa, as long as both parts are there. So I got my restrictions, y can't be negative 2 or 2, and then my reduced fraction. I will say this though, on your tests and quizzes, generally the restrictions will come after, but when you're writing your answers, I don't care. All right, number 4, denominators are the same. They're both x squared minus 1, so I'm going to leave that as x squared minus 1 for now. We are subtracting here. So when we're subtracting, we have to remember this subtraction sign is going to go to both parts of that numerator after it. So that makes, we're going to be subtracting 5x, and when I subtract a negative 6, that means I'm really adding 6. So really what it does is it changes the signs of both those parts of the numerator up there. So now 6x minus 5x would give us a 1x. And then negative 5 plus the 6 would give me positive 1. And again, remember, it became positive 6 because we were subtracting that negative, so that makes our signs change. So we got to try to reduce. We've got a dots factoring in our denominator there, so let's take care of that. X squared minus 1. What would that factor into? X minus 1, x plus 1. So what are our two restrictions? 1 and negative 1. Cancel out our x plus 1's. And we get 1 over x minus 1 as our final reduced fraction. So taking a look on the back, are the denominators the same in number 5? Yep, they're both trinomials, but they are the same. So I'm going to keep my x squared minus x minus 6 there. We have an adding, so we're going to be adding our terms here. So x squared plus a negative x squared. What happens to those x squares? They cancel each other out. X squared plus a negative x squared cancel each other out. So then I'm left with 4x plus 8. So now comes the reducing. Do we have a GCF factor up top? Yeah, 4. We got a GCF of 4. So when I take out the 4, I get an x plus 2. Can we factor that trinomial in the bottom? Yeah. Signs will be different because it's a negative 6 at the end. So what multiplies to give us 6 but can give us a 1 in the middle? 3 and 2. Which one would be our negative? 3. And then my 2 would go there. Since I have my denominator factored, I'm going to take care of my restrictions quickly. X can't be 3 or negative 2. We cancel out those x plus 2's, one from the top with one from the bottom. We're left with 4 over x minus 3. So there's our final answer on that one with our restrictions. Denominators are the same, so I'm going to keep my denominator as 2x squared plus 5x minus 3 for now. We are subtracting, so remember we want that subtraction sign to go to both parts of my numerator up there. So that's going to make it a negative 2x and a negative 1. So now let's combine our numerators. What's 3x minus 2x? X. Yep, and then 4 minus 1 gives us a positive 3. So chances are we're going to be able to reduce stuff. So let's try factoring out our denominator. We have a trinomial with no GCF there, because you got a 2, a 5, and a 3. They have no common factors other than 1. So because it's 2x squared, that means it's going to be 2x and x. Signs are different. I have a feeling my signs are going to go that way because I have this x plus 3 in the top. So I think one of my factors down below is going to be x plus 3. So to multiply to give us 3 would be 3 and 1. So just to make sure we're right, again, remember, in your heads you should be doing your check. Little smile when I multiply, that gives me a negative 1x. Big smile when we multiply, that gives us 6x, negative 1 plus 6, there's our 5x. So we did factor that right. And so we had that little hint up top that one of them was going to be x plus 3, so I went with it. So our two restrictions this time would be negative 3. And that 2x minus 1, does anybody know what that would give us as a restriction? 1/2, good job. So negative 3 and 1/2. Got to add the 1, divide by 2. So our x plus 3's cancel. And we get 1 over 2x minus 1 is our final answer. All right, 2 more. All right, number 7, what do we have to do to it first? We got to change the denominator in that second fraction so that it matches the first one. And we'll make that 2x minus 2, which means that subtraction sign is going to change to a plus. So when I change that denominator to make them match, that sign always changes to the opposite. So I got 2x minus 2 as my denominator, so I'm going to keep that. And so now we're adding our numerators. So the only x's I have up there is that 2x. And then 5 plus a negative 1 would give us a 4. So we got a GCF factor in the top. We can pull out a 2. We have a GCF factor out the bottom. We can pull out another 2. What's our 1 restriction going to be? 1. X can't be 1. And then the only thing we can cancel are those 2's that we pulled out. We got an x plus 2 and an x minus 1. Those aren't the same, so we can't cancel them, and that's going to be our answer. X plus 2 over x minus 1. So for that last one, are denominators the same? No. So we're going to actually save this for next class. That's when we're going to deal with denominators that aren't the same.